I just wanted to tell everybody thank you for coming out. We appreciate. Huh?
Can you guys hear us?
Can you hear me? Back of the room? Okay. Sound check. My name is Anali Vargas. I am the project coordinator for Conejos Clean Water. And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for coming out tonight to join us. I know some of you have traveled from long ways to be here, so we'll try to finish up as soon as we can. So I'd like to start by just going around and introducing ourselves, starting with Arminio. Just kind of tell who you are and where you're from.
My name is Arminio Martinez. I live in Taos. I'm a grazing permittee in 3 different allotments up at in the wilderness, up at the Taoski Valley. And I also graze over in Ojo Caliente, Cerro Azul Grazing Association. I'm familiar with some of the faces that I've seen at the Northern New Mexico Livestock Association. And I come from several generations that have grazed on forest land and state land, going back probably 400 or 500 years. My grandfather grazed up at the Taoski Valley when New Mexico was a territory. Then it became a state. I'm still able to hold on to those grazing permits with the Forest Service, as much as hassles they give us. But it's part of the wilderness that was put in place, I think it was back in 76. And he had enough probably foresight, and this is pretty much from my perspective, okay? So it's not anything personal. You have your opinions and so on and so forth. But I've been holding on to those permits for since I was a kid, since he was grazing up at the Taoski Valley. Then I grazed over going towards Angel Fire from the highway up north towards the Pueblo. Also a grazing allotment that's been in existence for a number of years. Up at the Ski Valley, since it's wilderness and it was put into wilderness, one of the things that my grandfather insisted and pushed the New Mexico congressional delegation, that if it went into, he wanted to preserve it for his kids and grandkids, and I'm one of those grandkids. He says, as long as you put that, the language that it's going to be for traditional uses for my family, for generations down through the years. Since northern New Mexico was, as most of you folks know more than I do, it's been it was a land grant, and so is southern Colorado to some extent. So those are the things that we're trying to get into place. If it's going to be wilderness, make sure that those traditional uses that exist in southern Colorado and northern New Mexico are put in place. That's a pretty much a key element. We don't want any more government intrusion. We want to make sure if it takes place in that regard, we want to make certain that traditional uses are pretty much in bold letters that government will respect. They respected the Taoski Valley grazing portion that I've got. I've been able to develop springs. I've done enclosures. Contrary to the concept, people think that once it becomes government or wilderness, it's no longer able to do a lot of the project. I built, it's been more, actually, it's been easier for me to work with the wilderness. I was able to put a steel corral just as big probably as this room in here. And it took me for years and years and years. Once Bacon put the conservation easement here in San Luis with Ken Salazar, then I was able to get a little more flexibility from the Forest Service, from USDA, and we're able to make a lot of developments there, enclosures, springs, versus I have, like I indicated, Ojo Caliente, and it's pure hell to be able to go with through the Forest Service and get everything has to go through NEPA. We have to wait for a number of years, and the difference up at the Ski Valley could be, since Bacon is a wealthy person, he bought the Ski Valley, we're able to do more things. The executive director that he's got is pretty open and flexible, so we're able to communicate with him pretty often. I'm up at the Ski Valley once a week, tending to my livestock. Forest Service doesn't go up there. The people there that own the ski valley have met Bacon twice actually in Taos and up here when Ken Salazar was doing this conservation easement. So
Thank you.
So if you have questions,
Yeah.
yeah, most
We'll
definitely.
have question and answer, so.
Sure. My name is John Olivas. I am the traditional community organizer for the New Mexico Wilderness Alliance. I was actually part of the coalition that worked on the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument in Taos County. So I'll again answer any questions that you guys might have in regards to the experiences that took place down in southern New Mexico. But again, making sure that those traditional activities around traditional uses happened around the acequias, the land grants, around grazing permittees. If any of you have read the proclamation around the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument, those are uses that had to remain if it was going to move forward. So we'll get into more conversations and questions as we move forward.
Yes, thank you. First, everyone, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to meet with us. My name is Angel Peña. I work with Conservation Lands Foundation. Conservation Lands Foundation works across the West with small community organizations, much like Conejos County Clean Water. Once a community expresses an interest to do something special to their playgrounds, and once they start to garner some serious community support, that's when we're able to step in and just make sure information and facts are going back and forth. Thank you very much, and I'm excited to listen first, take all your questions, and hopefully we can answer some of them. Thank you.
Again, thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Justin Garut. I'm the Executive Director of Conejos Clean Water. So I oversee this program with the National Monument Expansion Initiative. We have the School and Community Garden here at the school in Antonito. We also have a recycling program and just put in a grant to do a regional-wide recycling initiative. And that's basically what we're kind of working on now. Thanks all for coming, and hopefully we can get some questions answered.
Wanda?
Hey everybody, my name is Wanda Sandoval Patterson. I'm kind of the newbie on board. I've only been here for about 3 months and getting to learn everything, but I'm definitely an advocate of preserving the traditional uses for this area. I'm kind of the Aggie outreach, so any of you that want to give me a call or set up an appointment, I'd be more than happy to discuss what I know, get your concerns answered, and so I welcome you all. Thank you.
John?
I'm John Bailey. I work for the BLM in Taos. I brag that I might have the best job in Taos County since I'm the manager of the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument. I was invited to be here to simply answer any questions you might have about what we're doing in New Mexico.
I'm Andrew Archuleta. I'm the BLM field manager for the San Luis Valley, and like John, here to answer any questions that might come, regarding BLM managed lands here in the valley.
Yes.
I'm Dan Urian. I'm one of the owners of Taos Mesa Brewing. We're a business in Taos County that saw the proclamation, and I'm here to talk from a business perspective. What has it meant from our business? I'm also on the Taos County Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors.
Okay, now that everybody has introduced themselves, let's just kind of get started. Just to review the proposal, to talk about the national monument. The proposal is preservation for traditional uses. So it's expanding the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument from the New Mexico state line, which is Puncha Valley, to Flat Top, approximately 64,000 acres of land out there. It's public BLM lands. Now the proposal is preservation for traditional uses. Now to define traditional uses, I mean that's cattle grazing, pinon picking, herb extraction, wood extraction, anything that qualifies as a traditional use would be preserved. Also, it would stay under the management of BLM, and it would also stay public lands. Now, this doesn't affect, there are private and state landowners in the National Monument expansion. This would not affect it would not affect them in any way. Under the proposal, the land could no longer be bought, sold, or leased. So that's basically because it would be preserved. Now, on top of the preservation for traditional uses, we're talking about the history out there. So when we talk to people, we talk to them about Kiowa Hill, the Lovatos Bridge, that's all included. The King's Mine out there, that would be grandfathered. So anything that's established upon designation, if it should happen to come to that, would be grandfathered. But there are also the Vargas Crossing out there when you cross into New Mexico in 1694. So that's just some of the history. It includes Sigo Springs, which is a state wildlife area, Pinon Hills, which is the wilderness study area, Ace Flat Top, which is an area of critical environmental concern. So those are just some of the things within the expansion that when we talk to resident small business owners, we talk to them about. So that's just kind of the proposal in a nutshell. It would not affect PIL. It does not affect property taxes. It does not increase property value. As far as our outreach has gone, we have tried to reach everybody. We have gone town to town. We started in Ortiz. We went to San Antonio. We've been to Antonito, to Romeo, to La Jara. I personally have tried to go house to house to talk to all local residents, all small businesses, because this is a community-based effort. When we started this at the grassroots level. So my job is to try to speak to as many people as I can to see how they would feel, because we really do want to do what's best for the community. So we have reached several towns. We're starting Manassas. We've reached Sanford, Capilene, the Sauces. We have presented to boards. So this is kind of where our outreach is. I've also reached out to Castilla County, since they are the adjacent county, because the land is adjacent to Castilla County. So we've done outreach over there to small business owners, residents, the town of San Luis, county commissioners. So that's just kind of the proposal. We kind of wanted to make this into more of a community base, so we also want to hear everybody's opinions. So just to kind of talk about direct benefits of the National Monument are considered preservation for traditional uses. Any misconceptions from the New Mexicos that we've talked about are, of course, well, the sheep. That was not because of the designation of the National Monument. And a lot of people, I get questions about the sheep. Well, in the New Mexico side, we can no longer graze sheep in certain allotments. Well, that did not come about because of the National Monument. That came about because of the endangered species, the bighorn sheep. So they didn't want the intermingling of the bighorn sheep with the domesticated sheep because of the worry of transfer of diseases. So that's one of the misconceptions.
Anna, people can't hear you.
No.
Yeah, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. We've definitely, success for us was to make sure that we take in as many questions as we can. We completely understand that we will not be able to answer all of them, but we hope that we can capture all of them. A few folks here from BLM as well as from the New Mexico side are here to hopefully clear any of those misconceptions that Anna are talking about. Before we jump into the question part, because that's where we kind of really want to focus most of our time, is I just wanted to create some context real quick. This is a push, this is a community organized push for a national monument status. This is not wilderness designation or has anything to do with the wilderness study areas. Our colleagues maybe at the BLM can clarify that if there's any further questions there, but just to kind of start off, whenever we start, many people get confused that they think what we're trying to do is turn the WSA into wilderness or expand the wilderness, and this is simply not the case. The land designations stay the way they are. National monument status simply ensures that these lands will be able to be grazed or used or hiked in or fished in perpetuity. That's our main concern. Second, we have a few maps out there. Just so folks know, we have been engaging the water communities. They too had some concerns. We have met with them many times individually and as a team, and we think now that we might have a way forward here in the future. Just as an example of how seriously we are going to take your questions. So the map is a little different, but that gives you and creates context for about what we're talking about. That's why I mentioned the map. And that was all I wanted to do real quick. So thank you.
Thank you, Angel.
should we open to questions?
Yeah.
We definitely wanted to be respectful of folks' time, so we only asked for an hour. So I'd love to definitely jump into questions, or keep this as free-flowing and as organic, and as factual as we can. So thank you.
And if you do have questions or comments, please start with your name and maybe which town or area you're from, just so we have some context for the question or the comment. That would be really helpful.
I have a question. What's going to be you guys' protocol?
What's your name?
Fred, from the Herald.
Thanks.
What's going to be you guys' protocol to get a vote from your audience or explain how, let's just say maybe favorable or unfavorable? What's going to be next?
I think, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, over in Taos County, what happens is you move closer towards any type of a designation. Right now, I think what's happening here in Colorado is that it's just an idea. So there really isn't any traction specifically in Washington, D.C. to make this happen. But usually when you get closer, then you start getting the Department of Interior involved in the process, and the Secretary of Interior will come down and start having those conversations. At that point, then you start, by a raise of hands, how many support it, how many don't. They did the same thing over in Taos County. They asked that specific question, how many of you guys want it, how many don't want it, and that's what happens at the congressional and delegation level. So I think these guys have done an awesome job. I mean, what happened at the Rio Grande del Norte over in the New Mexico side is we had a campaign that started back in the late 1980s. So it was introduced, there was a whole lot of process that took place. It wasn't until 2013 that it happened. So it's not something that happens overnight. You know, it's a congressional action that both the Senate and the House need to act on it. The president needs to sign it. So there's a lot of moving parts that go with this. I think what these guys are doing with the grassroots level, having a community meeting and getting input and what they need to answer, is kind of the steps that they're following at this point in time. So they could choose to ask the question today to see if, you know, who supports it, who doesn't. But the amount of work that these guys have put in up to date is phenomenal. These guys have done a really good job, and I'm sure that she's talked to a lot of you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fred.
And I think in the flag, yes, who was next?
Yeah, I'm Marilyn Winters, and I want to know, as a community organized group, what are you doing? Why is it a monument? A monument to what? I don't understand why you're making it a monument, and we already use it for racing and recreational, so what are you adding to, or what are you taking away from it by being an organization group?
I can't. So the way the federal government works with the land management agencies here in Conejos County and Costilla County over on that side, this is all BLM land. So the way the federal agencies work, so there's kind of two tracks that we did over in New Mexico. There's a national conservation area, and then you have a national monument. So a national conservation area takes legislative action. So it needs the House in Washington, D.C. to act on it, the Senate to act on it, then it goes to the president. As a national monument, there's a different track that you take for a national monument. National monuments are actually created as a executive order. So like the president can say, okay, we have support for this area, we want to go ahead and create this a national monument. So those are the differences. So you have wilderness. Wilderness can only be done through congressional action. So it has to go to the House, the Senate, then to the president. Whereas a national monument has that different track. The president could designate it tomorrow if he chose to do that. So those are the differences, and there's all kinds of different land protection measures that can happen. Within the Forest Service, you have like primitive non-mechanized. You have the BLM side, you have the national monument, or the national conservation areas. They use that. Forest Service uses something else. So It's all the same concept, it's just the track to get there. And national monument is an executive order, whereas the national conservation area, which is the same thing. And the way national monuments work, whatever infrastructure exists remains. So all the roads that exist out there that are there, those remain. So no new development happens. So if you're actually looking at a mining company, BLM says, okay, we're going to go ahead and lease this land for what turquoise I think is out here. So on BLM land, once it becomes protected, then those uses go away. If it's just BLM land the way it is today, and somebody chose to come in here and do mining, that they can do that. As long as you have an administration within the federal agency that allows that type of use to happen, they can go ahead and do it. Under a national monument, that goes away. That's kind of the idea.
You're saying executive orders then? Can I clarify? Like, the people don't get to vote, like Obama said, he just does an executive order?
Well, it would have to be actually your federal delegation here in Colorado would have to support this. Oh yeah. So it goes through the people's process. So I think this is just one component of that process. So they're going to have your federal delegation ask Department of Interior, so it's going to have to go through that process for sure.
I'm Maury Grimm,
Yeah.
and I'm on the board of Conejos Clean Water. I just want to clarify two things. The executive order to designate a national monument is only given if the community wants the project. Okay? It has to be grassroots. And second of all, just to clarify, the traditional uses of that land will be protected, and any further, like mining, fracking, further new grazing permits will not be allowed. So really, it protects what we have now for the future. Is that clarifying for you?
Thanks, Marian. Go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
I'm J.D. Schmidt. I'm a sheep rancher here in the valley. There are places in Utah that were designated national monuments, and grazing went away immediately. What's the guarantee? Because of Mr. Clinton, President Clinton said, well, we can just go ahead and do that. What's the guarantee that he won't do that again? Or any president, or this will turn that way?
Sure. John, do you have information on Grand Tetons? Or the
You might be
Grand
talking
Staircase?
about the Grand Staircase Escalante
Right.
National Monument. And I think a lot of people feel the way that was done was a big mistake. That was designated by President Clinton in 1996. And I hate to swear in public, but all hell broke loose. The local community was adamantly opposed to the perceived land grab. It wasn't that private land was put into federal ownership. I think by that they meant that all of a sudden the rules changed. Indeed, grazing continues at Grand Staircase, but there was years between the designation of Grand Staircase and the next BLM monument designation, because the Clinton administration really wanted to, okay, what did we do wrong in Utah? We have to make sure we never do that again. I appreciate what you said. The game now is that only if there can be substantive support shown by a local community for a special designation would it take place.
Well, most of the stuff, like Marilyn said, that we already have, and what more protection will we have, or how that,
Yeah.
Well, if you don't protect it, what you have could very well be taken away or changed by the BLM leasing the land out to another mining company.
So what you're saying is a national monument would absolutely protect grazing from under any circumstances.
Yes.
We as a community-based organization, I personally would not be supporting this and would not be pushing this forward through Conejos Clean Water if I didn't believe we had a broad base of community support. And I was born and raised here. My grandparents have been here grazing for generations too. And if I believed that was going to be taken away, I wouldn't be pushing this. And we all, when we present this, when we talk with people about this, we know grazing is important here. We know that we need to keep that going. And that's something that will be put forward and that we're going to mention and make sure that is heard. And I truly believe that our input is heard. If for some reason the whole Conejos County comes in an uproar and is like totally against it, it's not going to move forward, of course, right? This is community-based. It's not like it's just the sign of a pen, we do whatever.
That's why we're here. That's why we're here. Well, I just think that we've been protected a whole lot, and it costs us money every time we're protected. And, you know, it just seems like it always happens.
Okay.
Money and heartache, and it makes our life harder. Every time the government protects us, it makes our life harder.
Thank you.
You know, and that's where a lot of us are coming from.
One of the handouts was the proclamation for New Mexico. I encourage everybody to read it. We have already talked to some of the water districts, and the verbiage is going to be a lot stronger. And so I encourage you to read it. If you have any questions, please bring them forward.
Yeah, and just as an example, and I don't mean to take too much more time for the questions, but just as an example, there was concerns from folks in the water. We definitely need to make sure this works for the community, which is why we are hoping the relationship we have been able to start will continue in the future, and we're able to work on something that works for them as well as for everyone else. And just to mention back to the Grand Staircase Escalante, that has been frowned upon by many folks on both sides of the aisle with that thing. And it's community engagement, and it's an invitations to open forums like this to make sure that something like that does not happen. We agree with you that, yes. Just
Espinoza Consulting Services. We do environmental consulting, valley-based. I'm also a trustee for the town of La Jera. And my question is, would the management plan that is restrictive in certain areas like grazing, on the New Mexico side, would they be carrying the same management plan over to Colorado? Because one of the reasons we don't have another transmission corridor of electricity to the valley is because of the management plan, basically, for Colorado side is one of the reasons. And there are restrictive uses. And I'm concerned that Conejos Clean Water, and when speaking outreach to people, and I've heard from our constituents as well as from people from other communities, that they were told that the restrictions would be the same that they are now, that there wouldn't be changes, that we'd still have access. And when you look at the management plan that was put into place in New Mexico, there are changes, you know, in terms of road use, in terms of grazing rights. I mean, and I guess that's my question more for the BLM guys, is are you going to be carrying that same management plan with its restrictions into Colorado?
Thank you.
First of all, we are hard at work on a management plan for the monument, but one has not yet been given its public comment period. We're hoping to have 4 alternatives reviewed by you folks and people in New Mexico sometime this summer. At the moment, you know, we just completed our resource management plan in 2012, and we're managing the monument lands under those guidelines. So the management plan is in the future. In terms of a management plan for an expanded monument,
I can answer that, yeah.
with our plan kind of moving forward with who knows when, if and when there ever would be an expansion, I'm guessing if there is a monument expansion, the proclamation would direct us to revise our monument plan that might not even be signed off yet. You know, so this is going to be a several-month process to bring that to completion. So that's kind of, yeah, I have that question myself.
I'm concerned because when this was brought to the people, and people were told that there would be no changes to traditional uses, and I don't think we can say that because it's the management plan that sets up how that use is. And right now, the BLM is managing it under their normal, right, under your normal management processes for land. And we don't know what studies, what comment, the scoping period that we end up having, what kind of plan at the end. And I think that has to be clear to people when it's being discussed, because we don't know at this point. You know, and promising people that additional uses are going to remain constant is great. But the fact of the matter, when you have a monument, you're looking at the concerns of that specific area. And that's why it has its own management plan to start with. And I think that just has to be clear to people that you can't make those promises.
Yeah, and part of it is when designation of a national monument, if it should happen to come to designation on the Colorado side, we would have our own resource management plan. So it would go through process. It would take public comments just like anything else. So they would have to redo the resource management plan on the Colorado side. We would get our own resource management plan and our own proclamation. So even though it's an expansion of the national monument in New Mexico, it is on the Colorado side, so we do get all our own stuff. I mean, we could even actually change the name if Colorado residents wanted it.
So just to clarify real quick, so we're bound by whatever designation of monument. If it's a presidential proclamation, then we're bound by that language. If it's, congressional, what's the right term I'm looking for, congressional act, then we're bound by whatever is in that act. So, the Rio Grande del Norte in New Mexico, they don't have a management plan yet. So any changes that have taken place would have taken place without the monument at this point, because they're currently managing under their resource management plan, which is fairly new. Here in the Valley, we have a 91 management plan. That's what we're managing under for this part of the Rio Grande. If a monument were expanded, it would depend on what is in that language that expands it as to how it determines. That's what would determine what our management plan would look like. Obviously, we would be working with the Taosville out to at least coordinate those things. So where it can be similar, it is, so that the state line is not this artificial boundary that, because the land is basically the same on both sides. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it really depends on what is in either the proclamation or the congressional act.
Thank you. Emily, did you have a question?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Emily. So I wanted to voice that I'm in full support of this. However, I do have a couple of questions. One is, I'm wondering if, first question is there going to be any additional federal funding maybe to help protect it, such as helping prevent illegal dumping, things like that?
So currently, we manage this part of the Rio Grande just out of our normal budget. There is no special fund, if you will, for managing the Rio Grande natural area or the wilderness study area or the ACDC. And there's a special recreation management area there. We don't get any extra funding for any of that. A monument falls under the National Landscape Conservation System, which does have some additional funding. It doesn't mean we would get any new funding. It just means probably an opportunity to compete for some funding.
Okay, so would there be any effect in helping prevent like illegal dumping? Is there any change to how that's handled?
That comes down to a law enforcement issue.
Well, and that's something that we're working on with Conejos Clean Water when we're talking about recycling. We've been working on cleaning up the illegal dumps and
Yeah, that's definitely something that we're kind of targeting from a different angle. Of course, there's all these issues we could be working on, and we have to choose kind of which ones. And obviously, illegal dumping is a huge issue. My friend Chris Canelli is here with the Ecosystem Council. She's also been a huge advocate and a huge support in this struggle to figure out what we can do to address these issues, how we can divert waste from the illegal dumps, how we can get more recyclables into the recycling stream. So believe me, we are working on that, and we just put in.
That's a consideration.
Exactly.
Part of this. Okay.
Just
I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
My other question is, I actually found an ancient burial site in this area, and I'm just wondering if, basically, I know that these lands are still continue to be disputed by the Kiowa and the Ute. So I'm wondering if they've been pulled in for any input on how they want to see this happen, and if there will be any, either shutting down of or opening up of further archaeological studies.
Definitely. So I'm an archaeologist by trade and education, and you're completely right. I am super for some sort of protection out here because the resources out here are amazing. Some of them date back some 11,000 years. So when we're talking about heritage, you're right. The Kiowa and you do have some serious heritage out there. Like Anna was saying at the very beginning, this was from beginning to end was going to be a community-driven effort. So we have first started with folks who live in and around the boundaries first. And just till recently have we been started walking our way up to Alamosa. So long way to say that they're kind of next. Yeah, it's a good, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, it maybe to add to that piece of it is, over on the New Mexico side, the Rio Grande del Norte is bound by the Taos Pueblo. So there was a ton of consultation that went on in regards to that. So I think moving forward, making sure that the Native communities stay involved in that conversation. So
I think especially important here because with Taos Pueblo, they live there. That's part of their land, and here the Kiowa and the Ute have been, pushed off. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Mary Ellis, did you have a question?
My name is Alice Trujillo. I'm with Antonica, a member of the Conejos County Clean Water. Morris Rim touched on this, and it is protection of the land. I think there isn't anyone here who isn't saying we want it to be used as you have been using it, bottom line. However, there have been stories and there have been instances where BLM has suggested to lease to fracking companies. And me personally, that has got to be protected. That land has got to be protected. That will protect you and your rights on how to use this land. And they come in very nice. $15,000 a week to lease a piece of land if it's private. They put things here in the valley. We're a closed aquifer. They pollute that. Not even the front range will be looking for our water. We can't use it. They won't want it. So I think that touching on what Marjorie said, we protect that land no matter what it takes. We protect your rights no matter what it takes. But fracking is in the air everywhere. We just got off of a fight in Rio Grande, New Mexico, where not even 15 minutes before people had been sold land to build houses. It was going to be compromised by a fracking company out of Oklahoma who hadn't even begun to follow the rules there. But they decided they'd come to New Mexico, who has a reputation of ignorant people, self-serving people, $15,000 for private land. We just need to protect the land.
Thank you.
We have that obligation.
Thank you.
Mrs. Valentine?
So I'm not clear on, to me right now, I'm Tammy Valentine, and I'm a resident and a rancher, and we have permits on BLM land. And I don't understand the benefit of this, honestly. It looks to me like once we put this in place, we're going to shut down agriculture development, economic development. We're going to close off the county for opportunities for jobs, to bring things in like that. I don't see why we need to go down this road. It's working the way it is. And why would we want to stop an opportunity to have permits on this land? Why would we want to? I have to respectfully disagree. If we have an opportunity to bring in more jobs and develop our county economically, I see that this is going to put, everything's going to freeze once this goes into place. And it's going to slow the growth of our county down. And I think it's going to really interfere with agricultural development in this county. Speaking as a cattle rancher, it's going to, like he said, it's going to create a lot of barriers that you can't foresee that. You have a management plan that you foresee happening towards the end of this, but there's no clear-cut way of what this is going to be, and to me it looks like it's really going to slow down a lot of opportunities just to have some well-groomed trails in our county. That's what it looks like to me.
Thank you. Mike, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah,
Dr.
my name is Mike Armenta. I'm a member of Conejos Clean Water also. And this is just BLM land. It doesn't hinder private land development. It doesn't
Well, we lease BLM land.
Yeah, and in the proclamation, if you read the proclamation in New Mexico, it is very specific in there in regards to preserving grazing rights. So that is one positive, that grazing rights are preserved in perpetuity. Another thing, if you look at, and I'm sure the Taos business leader can attest to this, tourism does increase when it's on a national scale through the BLM system of national conservation lands. So there is an actual increase in economic opportunity for the residents. Conejos County is one of the poorest counties in the state. I think that the median household income is below $30,000. So if we could get on a national stage like this and increase even a little bit, that would increase jobs, economic opportunity would increase, there would be increase in businesses, and there's probably the opportunity for someone to start some small businesses, such as like hiking, rafting down the river, or taking out people on four-wheelers, or things of that nature. So to say that it hinders economic development, I think is a misunderstanding and a misconception of what went on in Taos. And if you look at the statistics and the numbers, you will see that it has actually increased. And that's something that would benefit not only the town of Antonito, but it would benefit Ajara, it would benefit Manassa, people coming in, stopping for gas, and I see that as a good thing.
And I can speak directly to that from the Taos County Chamber of Commerce. 2015 was the biggest year Taos County has had in lodgers tax in 2 decades. We've been on a 3-year trend of increasing our lodgers tax. Prior to that, we had a 5-year period where we were decreasing our lodgers tax. It's hard to draw a direct causation, is it because of the national monument or not, but that's the clear indication as to what's generating a lot of that push. Now we're talking about one sector, which is tourism. I don't presume to understand the economies of Conejos County up here. Speaking of Taos County, I can say that we have seen an increase in the amount of visitation. GRTs are up as a result of that. For my own personal business, I can tell you, we're fortunately located, we're 2 miles away from the National Monument and one of the better access points. We've seen a tremendous increase of weekend traffic visitation, mostly, believe it or not, from in-state, and then also from the Front Range of people coming down who want to see the National Monument and want to spend a weekend in Taos. Now, there's no reason why they wouldn't also expand that up in here to Southern Colorado.
So just along those lines, what about agricultural development in Taos? Because it seems to me that that's not what it used to be, and that's what I worry about.
Well, you're absolutely right, agricultural development in Taos, but that has nothing to do with this national monument. That's been a factor that has been going down for the past.
Well, I think if you make the argument that it has nothing to do with the national monument, you can't really take credit for the other development to be because of the national monument.
Sorry, I don't understand. Say that again, please.
I think that if you can't blame the national monument for interfering with agriculture development, you can't give it credit for adding to the...
I think Mr. Martinez could probably speak more for agricultural in Taos County than I could regarding that.
And actually, she's got a real good point, simply because I certainly understand where you're coming from. Okay, and those are the things that we went to Washington to be able to make certain. This is probably a gathering of mostly farming individuals, whether they're doing sheep or they're doing cattle. And part of Rio Grande del Norte, in fact, that well, that spring that's in there was named after me, simply because my grandfather grazed sheep there and cattle, from the Pot Mountain all the way with the Raires Martinez and so on and so forth. And that's one of the concerns that we've tried, we've been working with a coalition to make sure that those rights that you enjoy, that we all enjoy, through the tradition that's come from generations on down, that we want to make sure that it's certainly preserved. Like I said, one of the concerns that we have, myself as a permittee, I was concerned simply because the ski valley is pretty much people that come from outside to ski. And they like to have their own little buildings and so on and so forth, whether they get a 100-year lease with a Forest Service or they buy their own private parcels. Those are the things that I made sure that was in place, and it was affirmed by Congress in that this is a different, this is just the monument, the Rio Grande del Norte, but I'm just making reference to that simply because of one of the things that concerns me in Ojo Caliente. There's we graze on 30,000 plus acres of some BLM, as John would say, next to the Río Grande, and some on forest, mostly on forest. And now there's a private place that came up with, they bought a certain piece of land. I have no idea how that was exchanged with the Forest Service. Now they put locks on those things. There's another parcels there towards more to the west that's private and BLM land. That was in some form of consideration, hopefully not to transfer to or sell to corporations. I know that on this place here, where the National Monument is in place that was supposed to extend this way, I did that exchange with Alfonso Abeta. He's from here. I think most of you guys know the Abetas. And that's how it took place. I know that, and most of these folks, pretty much feel the same concern, that we want to hold on to those traditions, to those lands. We want to make sure that they are not sold off to the highest bidder. They're not exploited just for the for the sake of
Right.
bigger companies.
I see that point. I feel like what we have is working.
Do you mind if I open it up to other questions?
Yeah, that's
Thank you so
fine.
much, both of you. Yes, sir.
I think this works opposite what anybody thinks it's going to work.
Can you give me your name?
Dennis Moeller.
Thank you, Mr. Moeller.
And I've been out in these BL lands from both sides of 285 my entire life, and then also on the Colorado side. And I haven't seen nothing change out there really in my whole life. Okay? As soon as you designated a monument, that's what's going to bring the change, because you attract people to it. Who knows about the Lovatos Bridge beside anybody that's here in this valley, in this county? And as soon as you publicize it, you're going to bring a ton of people in here. And you may not change grazing now, but just start bringing all the attention to the things you're trying to preserve, and now it's not the same anymore. And then that's when the grazing and some of these other uses start to go, because there's too many other people coming around and don't like the other things, and that's what's going to happen. It happened on Blue Lake when they made a wilderness. There's wilderness lands that happened to. As soon as they made a wilderness, attracted the people to. Cruces Basin, Jimmy?
Okay.
And then they changed. So I don't think I understand your intent to keep these things like they are. But as soon as you make it a national designation, now you're going to bring the change, and you're going to bring the attention to it for everybody to come, and all the public that comes will change it.
Thank you for your comment.
That won't happen.
Can I ask you, Dennis?
Yep.
So are you against the economic development? Any economic growth?
Well, okay, are you gonna let some of these things be tampered with and changed and say the economic development overrides that? I thought you wanted to keep it the same. If you want to talk about economic development, then designate it and then eventually get rid of all the grazing. What's that going to do to the economic?
It's not the plan.
If they put it in a study for wilderness, which could happen, then it'll change.
That's not our plan whatsoever, sir.
But it's not your plan, but once you designate it a monument, then it's going to be over your head to change the grazing, and you won't have anything to say about it then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's what'll happen eventually.
Thank you, Dennis.
My name's Randy Schofield. I'm a third-generation rancher that grazes in the Taos Resource area. And I'm also a convicted elk poacher. I think we all want to keep our traditional uses going. No question about that. However, I do want to say the same thing I said at the meeting we had in that needle over the Rio Grande del Norte thing. And that is, we've grazed out there for years. We took care of the land. Dry years, we haven't even took any cattle out there. We've managed to land good. And I feel, reading this proclamation for that down there, it just says grazing will continue. It doesn't say grazing will continue at the current condition you have now. So we could get this thing passed and then wham bam, hey, we're going to cut you 50% because of something or other. And that could happen. Now, as far as the lady brought up the fracking issue, I agree with that. I don't want to see fracking here either. Can't we just do that through our local management plan we have now?
No.
Why not?
Not until we have community rights.
Alfonso, did you want to speak to that?
Can't we set areas aside and say no fracking, no mining?
Alfonso?
They have on the Taos resource area.
Hi, my name's Alfonso Aveda, and I'm a permittee with the BLM in Taos County, and I have about 5 miles, or between 5 to 6 miles that's right next to the Rio Grande, to the gorge. And the national monument has not changed in any way of I've been grazing. Of course, it's just been here for a couple of years. But what I have liked about the traffic there is going to have to be limited. But I see that the BLM has been enforcing out the road more so than it had before. And we would like to see that continue, because that is where the poachers and all that get off the road and disturb our cattle or sheep or whatever it is. I don't have for or against the monument. I do believe that it's not going to hurt us one way or the other. When I met, when they were doing it in New Mexico, I voted for it because I thought that they were going to do it anyway. And I think it is for our own protection, as long as our grazing has continued the way it's been for centuries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Tyler Hupbaker, and I think a lot of you know me anyways, but it's an honor to be here tonight and to be with everybody. I have kind of a series of questions that maybe can kind of help direct this group, I think. I'd like to go back to Fred's question, where we talked about how this would come to a vote and what would be that process. As United States citizens, some non-resident aliens, I don't know if you're familiar with that terminology with the federal government, we have the right to go through our local government. I point this direction because we have our county commissioners here listening tonight. And we have that right to go through that local government and put it to a vote as far as what our community is. Would that come to an actual vote where it be on a ballot issue or something like that? Or?
I think there's many ways to move any type of protection forward, like John was speaking to earlier. As far as public input, this is just the first of what we hope are many ways that the community can voice their support, and that we together can work on something that we can then go up the ladder with. But again, that's together, right? That's us, you, that's us, the water folks, that's us. Business owners, that's us, tourists, and so that I guess is the chain of command. As far as any official vote, the current mechanism that we are going down, this is kind of the community vote. This is the community support.
Well, sir, with all due respect, you call it a vote, but this is just an open meeting.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
And the other thing is, I don't feel like this is a place for a public forum. So, we can say, voice our, but it's not a place for a public forum. It's to get our questions answered. I'm very happy with the uses that are out there currently. And but anyways, it's not a public forum. My next question is Conejos County Clean Water, are you guys neutral? Or are you for? Are you against? Maybe you could address that, Mr. Group.
Definitely. So Conejos Clean Water started, as you know, 5 years ago. You may not know this. I'm making an assumption. Started when Los Alamos Labs started bringing nuclear waste through Antonito, and the community here stood up and raised their voices and made sure that their voices were heard. And in that same line of thought, we continue to fight for environmental justice, social justice, food justice, and economic justice. And we see this as an environmental justice issue. So we want to preserve how we are all currently using it and ensure that no corporations, no other development can come in and grasp it from us because they have more money, for example. Conejos Clean Water is definitely for this, or else we wouldn't be pushing this. But with that said, if we had gone, we have been going door to door, Anna, Wanda, if everyone were like, no, you can't do this, of course we would have stopped. We're not going to push something against our people, and we have over 300 letters of support so far from various places around Conejos County.
With all due respect, again, I appreciate your efforts. I think it's so important to take care of our environment. I would like a neutral entity to seek input. As I visited on the phone, you know, it wasn't, how do you feel? It's like, have you thought about this? It's kind of like there's almost an agenda, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I am for protecting the environment. Those of us that use the land, I am a permittee out on the Pinion Hills out there, and we are good stewards over what we have. You know, and I'm sorry to bring this out, but this is all information that I've collected and worked with our BLM manager, you know, to go through that, you know, and we have discussions regularly, you know, what can we do better to protect this land? How can we do it? I understand it's multiple use. That land is for everybody, and invite the public to know what we're doing out there, you know, as far as ranchers and you know how that goes. So those are just some questions that I had.
Thank you.
Again, I caution everyone here tonight that this is not a public forum. You know, it's for questions to be answered. I would like to hear, you know, I appreciate what's happening in New Mexico, but I'd also like to hear from Colorado and what's you know, happening there. I know there's some experience and things there in Colorado. So those are just some thoughts that I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great points. Thank you.
I figure, you know, one of the things, and I certainly share your concerns, what we did in New Mexico, it's very different than southern Colorado. Of course, we have pretty much the same thoughts. And what you, again, like I indicated to this young lady, what we did, we got the grazing permittees, we got the acequias, we got the land grant, all the individuals that are affiliated within the community. And we had our, you know, to start the base and start working with John and some other folks. Before we were able to trust them, we were able to make sure that these are the things that would be put in place prior to any approval of any of the national monument. Those are the things that were certainly concerned 99% of you folks here probably. And that's how we started. The acequias were concerned about the water quality, the grazing permittees, the land grant folks. So all of these individuals came, because northern New Mexico and southern Colorado are pretty much land grant pieces of the earth. So that's how, and we worked closely with the Pueblo. The Pueblo, they have their own philosophy and so on and so forth. But that's how we started, and it would be good, and I commend you for that, simply because you need to meet with your folks and see what's best for you.
I think one group that's been left out tonight in a lot of discussion is the hunting groups and the hunting interests that are out there, and how those are protected. I do take rest and assurity in my local government and working through my local government. And no matter, like, even if I have a direct tie to Washington, it's not my thing to push my agenda and get that through. You know, our local government right here is where the rubber hits the road, and that's how we.
Sometimes you can't trust Washington, so that's where you got to be cautious.
Yeah, and I'm not on that forum, but you know, that's kind of some thoughts that I have.
Thank you.
And thanks for hearing me on that.
Thank you.
I think, you know, what you're saying is, I think what's not understood is that what I think Conejos Clean Water and the people who signed on to this are trying to do is to help you sustain the lifestyles that your families have built here in the San Luis Valley, and to preserve that for your future generations. Does that make sense?
It does, but again, with all due respect, our ancestors have done, you know, clear up until now, it's completely changed the preservation and management that we have and it's working. You know, you look at our range conditions
It's
now.
working now, but it could so easily.
Excuse me, it's worked very, very well for the Anglo population that live in this community. It's not worked for the Hispanic people in this community. Our lands have dried up. The water flows right to the bottom of the river. It hasn't worked well for everybody. Be perfectly clear about that.
It's not a race thing, like.
But what he just said, that it's worked for everybody, it hasn't worked for everybody. This is a poor community, it's continued to be poor. You try to stifle the economy, it's not gonna happen. This is a way to have economic growth, that's what you talked about. Why try to stifle it?
Sir, again, with all due respect, I appreciate what you're saying there. I don't think there's a division among, you know, you say I'm Anglo, Hispanic, there's not a division there. And I don't think it's a public forum for that. I think the issue at hand is, what does the national monument look to everybody? You know, and so I appreciate everyone coming tonight and answering some of those questions that I have.
Thank you. Mayor, just a second.
This gentleman across the way has been wanting to ask a question for a while.
Okay, and then Mayor Abeta.
That's all right.
Thank you.
I'm Jim Bagwell, Rancher Hunter. You mentioned talking about these federal delegations and all that, so who are these ones that we need to talk to? Because you guys get most of the talking time tonight. You've had a huge head start. I mean, I would like for the opposition side to be heard from the federal delegation as well. So what are our channels for that?
I think the gentleman here gave you the forum.
Mr. Derrera, thank you.
This is not a federal delegation. I mean, who are we, the ones we need to talk to get our voices heard in this matter?
Well, actually, we have several field reps with us here tonight. Charlotte is Senator Bennett's field rep, and then we also have Brenda, who is Tipton's representative. So we do have them, and Garden, and Senator Garden, Kathy also.
So maybe like.
I would encourage people that are in opposition to this to let their voices be heard, because you guys have had a huge head start and making the most noise, and that doesn't mean you're in the majority.
Thank you. Mayor Abeta.
My name is Aaron Abeta. I'm the mayor of Antonito, and I am the 7th of 9 generations. I grew up on a ranching family, and there is a little bit of concern on my part as well, because I see the possibility for loss, because we are surrounded by loss on a daily basis. It informs our daily lives. It makes us leery of any sort of change, and I can totally appreciate that that change is ominous on many of our minds. However, if those grazing rights are protected in perpetuity, and we do have a say in how the management plan is crafted, then we can preserve what has been our way of life for generations, for centuries upon centuries. We can preserve what is, in my opinion, at risk, and I'll explain why. Last year alone, there were 37 bills introduced to the Congress, and those 37 bills were to try and get the national or federal government to revert land to states' rights. As such, those states' rights, if they are reverted to the state, then says the state can do whatever they want with that land. If they do whatever they want with that land, I guarantee, regardless of our divisions, regardless of our disagreements, regardless of where we stand on this issue, the Front Range wants our water. And every single person in this room will fight tooth and nail for that water and for the right to keep that water. Amen. That being said,
Private property issue, not BLM.
the BLM can be circumvented by states' rights if, in fact, those federal bills do go through.
The water rights are private property. That has nothing to do with this.
No, the water rights are belonging to individuals for their individual use, but when it comes to protecting the aquifer, when it comes to protecting the Rio Grande itself and that particular corridor, that is what's at jeopardy. And our rights as ranchers and farmers and citizens of this shared community, where we all live and prosper, and where we all want to protect one another, regardless of our differences, that's what's at stake here, in my opinion. And the Rio Grande del Norte, regardless where you fall on it, protects those things in perpetuity, in forever. And if you want that legacy to exist, you have a voice in that. You can contribute to the resource management plan and say, I don't want hunting to go away. I don't want grazing to go away. I want the water rights to remain as is. I don't want our water to go into the Front Range. We have that voice. If that voice is taken away from us, then we are essentially fish out of water, pun intended. I encourage you, regardless of where you stand at this moment, to do your research and find out that it is in fact a Western problem and land is being taken and our way of life is directly threatened by such losses. On another issue, to address this, Ms. Valentine, the outdoor industry is a $650 billion per year industry. Even the slightest piece of that pie for our community is economic development. And if our ranching and our cattle grazing and our sheep grazing rights are protected, then there is an economy to be had there. People admire what it is we have. They want what it is we have. It is our fervent belief, and I'm not speaking for Conejos County, all our fervent belief, that we need to protect what is ours and what we hold dear. And that's all I'm asking you to consider. We're not voting tonight, Mr. Huffaker. We're expressing our opinions. This is an informational meeting. I don't want anybody to make up their mind having not first examined the information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know what? The only word I have not heard here tonight is regulation. And I feel that's what this is going to be. And I referred to the lady that sat over here and asked about the illegal dumping.
Emily.
That comes from regulation. We had it set up within our counties. And when you get regulation, you push everything out. You don't use common sense. The lady about the fracking. Okay, say I have a piece of land out in the middle of this map. Do the people get to come to my place so they can frack off of my private land?
Yes.
You
Yes.
will let them come across the land that you have put as a state monument or a
They can't. That's a state monument.
Do you mean national monument?
Whatever
So we're on the
you're
same page.
making it.
Yeah. What is your question? Can you redefine it?
What you can do on regulation. I feel that what you're doing tonight is setting up regulation. All of these people along here make money off of the land that you're talking about. When you made your study, did you say how many raise sheep on this land? How many raise cows? How many make money off of this land? Do you have that? Do you have that in your study?
I'm not sure what studies you're referring to.
Your study.
We do have lists of who owns land and what they do on that land, and that's kind of how we.
Because I know, I know most of these people here. I don't know of any of them that have bed and breakfast out on the Chicos out here. That's not how these people make their money. They're living. And once you kill that living with regulation, you're killing a centuries-old way of life. I see most of the people sitting up at the front are young. And a lot of these people have lived a long time the way they have off of what they had. The word regulation has not been given tonight, and I feel that that's at the basis of what you're trying to put into place here in Conejos County.
Thank you. We're about 24 minutes over. We started 15 minutes late. Should we take 4 more questions?
4 more.
4 more questions or so?
Thank you. I'm Cleve Simpson, the General Manager of the Rio Grande Water Conservation District. So I just wanted to highlight, kind of tap into what the mayor was talking about the water issue. So the district that I represent was very concerned about the language as it was written for the proclamation in New Mexico.
absolutely felt like it did not meet the requirements that we thought were necessary to indeed protect water rights, senior water rights on both the Conejos and the Rio Grande River. So we actually wrote a letter of concern and have met with our congressional delegations as well. And just wanted to highlight that we are trying to work with the groups to offer language that better protects and enhances that water right. Just caution people about creation of a national monument and sometimes some implied and inferred water rights that potentially take water rights away from senior water right users on the Rio. So I just wanted to bring that forward, that we certainly were very concerned about that perspective of it and trying to work to get to a better place with that. And we talk a lot about the land uses, but the water portion of it is vitally important to the district that I represent, which is representative of everybody probably is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, John Sandoval, Conejos County Commissioner. One of the things that I will admit is when you say it's community-based or grassroots-based, I'd be interested for somebody to define community-based. Is it local community? Is it Alamosa? Where exactly are you asking for your information from? And I will give Clean Water some credit because there were a number of people that were for the nuclear waste coming out of Lano and bringing it down, offloading it and taking it somewhere else. A lot of people for it. When people actually learned what it was about, then they said, you know what, maybe we're not for this. And I only say that because the river was right there. It ultimately came to the county and we voted it down. And Conejos Clean Water needs to be commended for that. But my question would be, moreover, conversely, when you're asking people for letters of support, if somebody came to me and said, are you for this or that, I'd say, heck yeah, but I would want to know what it's all about before I made that ultimate decision, because there may be some things in there that we are not aware of. And I will give you a couple of concerns. Conejos County is 65% public land. Over 35% of that is wilderness. We have an ACEC, which is environmental critical concern. We have a wilderness study area, which is all designated without local participation. I disagree with anybody in here that says it's not going to affect PILT, because I personally, Mr. McCarroll and Mitch as well, has went and begged Congress, because Commissioner Sowards went and got PILT. PILT is payment in lieu of taxes. What that means is the government doesn't pay tax like you and me do. They pay the county based on a certain assessment. So we go fight for PILT every single day, every single year, and it's never guaranteed up because it doesn't come out. One of the things I like to tell you folks about is, for instance, the Forest Service. What did they do? They came up with something called backwoods designation. I'll bet you not anybody in here except for poachers and people like to hunt up know what that means. That is a backward way around Congress for getting a wilderness designation without Congress actually giving them the designation. So when somebody comes and tells me, we're here from the government, we're here to help, I don't necessarily agree. I'm not saying that it may not be good or bad, but all that information, when you say it's grassroots, I'm really leery when it says it's grassroots, and show me some of those letters of where they're from. And when you say resource management, we had a deal, or we're in the process. One of the things that Secretary Salazar did when he was here, he got a designation for for solar areas. One was up here by the Pozo, one was out here just east of town. So what we did, we worked with Tri-State Generation to hopefully utilize that foresight that they had to know that this was an energy zone. So what happened is when me and Mr. McCarroll had to go to Santa Fe to tell, they were against it. So I'm saying this plan will not allow wind or solar, am I correct?
There is a solar designation. Do you want to talk to the solar designation zone?
There is a solar energy zone that has already been designated right next to the Punche. There's also one on by Los Mogotes. So the solar energy has already been designated. It's right next to the Punche.
One of the things that you're not telling everybody is the solar with the megawatts that they're going to generate needs a transmission line that's going to get it from point A to point B. When you have that designation, they start limiting the amount of avenues and alleyways that you can get that to market, which is your economic development, which we need. So I'm just saying that we need to look at all of this and make sure that it's best for everybody involved, and I agree. Let's get a forum where we can get folks that are not gonna come and argue, but give your points and have a reason to back it up. Don't just say I'm for it or against it because it sounds like it's something cool. Have your information and say, and that people make better decisions with better information.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Or I'm sorry, you've been raising your hand for minutes. I'll give it to you, please.
Okay. My name is Yvonne Bermudez. I live in Castilla County. I'm a rancher and also a landholder. I found out about this meeting on a post from Facebook, and I was wondering if you could clarify. It says, heads up, group members, this is extremely important for all of you in Castilla County and Conejos County. This is the public meeting in Conejos regarding the proposed expansion initiative. Basically, the feds want to extend the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument from New Mexico, Colorado state line up to southern SLB to and around the Great Sand Dunes area. Yeah, the people of Castilla County Prairie are being kicked off their land. I was one of them, and are being stopped from any further developments. Is this affected by that? Because when they began to throw people off their own land that they own, like for example, I own my land, I paid the taxes, there's no mortgage on it. I even have permits that were taken from me. And Castilla County had permits set up on the books, and then all of a sudden they said they were not selling the permits. So it was kind of like a no-win situation. You couldn't buy the permit if you were a new person, and you couldn't be there without the permit, and even if you had the permit, as I did, I was still thrown off my land. The area goes through the Rio Grande. That's where they started throwing people out. Now, is this associated with this? Is this post true?
I can answer
And
that.
are there other people, if this goes through as a monument, that will also be thrown off their land because it becomes an issue of eminent domain? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if you look at the comments on that post, I commented on every post I could find on Facebook yesterday to make sure that the correct information was out there.
There's no comment on this.
I must not have seen that group. I apologize. But the comment that it goes up to the Great Sand Dunes is completely inaccurate. If you look at the map that we have, it's a proposed map. It's not by any means final. It goes up to under the Conejos. So it stays in Conejos County. It doesn't affect anything in Costilla County.
Are you going to be taking other lands from other people?
No,
Are
so
you expanding it? Is that?
the current BLM public land out there in Conejos County is the only land that's of concern. Private land is not affected, state land is not affected. It's only the BLM public land in Conejos County. So that most of that post that you're referring to was very inaccurate, and I tried to catch that where I could.
Okay.
Thank you. So maybe one more comment.
I'm the guy that put that post on there, just so everybody knows. I apologize for the slight misinformation, because that was word of mouth that I had also heard through Sanford. Somebody that was involved there with a meeting that the BLM had come in and what's it called. My main concern, one of them is, and I hate to be the guy who's going to throw the Constitution around.
Can you speak up? I'm sorry.
I said I hate to be the guy to throw the Constitution around at everybody. And I'm not going to do that tonight because I don't think this is the place for it. My question is for the BLM. It's the BLM's responsibility right now to manage the land in question out here by the Rio Grande. Now, you talk about not restricting lands. Every other month or so I go out there to see a new little brown sign up on the road that says no access. And I also have a post that I found, and this is dated last year, but it just resurfaced. It's a paper from the BLM insisting that everybody, excuse me, goes to intent to impound unauthorized livestock. Pretty much everything that we all see out when we go out through the Labanos Bridge and the entire area, wild horses, cattle, yak. According to this, they're all in trespass and they all need to be removed. But at the same time, and you're all sitting here talking about not infringing on grazing rights. I've got it right here on paper. It's all signed by Paul Deegan. Does that name sound familiar? Deegan? His signature on that form dated August 19th of 2015, and it's good for a year. This just resurfaced. This wasn't hanging where I saw it 2 days ago. So my question is, that's a lot of, as far as I'm concerned, that's a lot of misinformation.
Let me just address that impoundment notice. So we have here quite a few grazing permittees who are legally permitted to graze on BLM land. We also have some folks that are not permitted to graze on BLM land who turn out their livestock. Those are the unauthorized livestock that we're talking about in that impoundment notice. We have to publish a notice to the public that we intend to impound trespass livestock. So if one of these gentlemen on their allotment, if somebody else is running cattle on their allotment, they're in trespass, and they're affecting one of these individuals. So, under our regulations, we can impound those cattle and remove them, because they're having a negative impact on these individuals as well as on the land. That's what that impoundment notice is about, purely illegal livestock on public land, not permitted livestock like we're talking about.
So when you go out there, there's only so many animals that you see. There's not 10,000 cattle running around out there on the prairie. You have, I think, 3 wild herds of horses, like 1 herd of yak, I believe, that I've seen out there, and some cattle. So I don't understand. I understand the fact that you gotta have grazing, you gotta pay your grazing fees. You also know what happened to private money down there. I'm still dealing with that. But when you guys talk about managing the land and not restricting the land, but at the same time, if what you're saying is about this notice of intent to impound, if that's legit and that's new, that's fine. I don't agree with it, but that's just one fact of it. You go across here to the other side, and I'm not sure if this is BLM land out here to the west of 285, if this is state land. I don't know what land this is out here.
It's a mix.
You get out here and you can drive for 3 miles into the woods and hit a gate. And it's wilderness area. There's nothing there. There's nobody at all whatsoever in there managing that land.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're still going to be here after now. I'd like to give Chris the floor to make one more comment, and then we'll be around. We welcome your input. My office, our office is at 611 here on Main Street. My phone number is on our website. Please do get involved. Please do come talk with us. We're not doing this in secrecy or anything. We really appreciate you coming out and sharing your comments and concerns. Chris?
I really appreciated hearing everyone's comments tonight, and it's good to have a bunch of good thinkers in the room. My name is Christine Canale. I'm director of the San Luis Valley Ecosystem Council. Before that, I actually coordinated Citizens for San Luis Valley Water from 1988 to the year 2000. So 12 years, we worked with the Rio Grande Water Conservation District to fight the trans-basin diversion in the valley. And what we realized with the national monument that was the Great Sand Dunes National Monument is if we expanded it and were able to make it into a national park, it was a way to protect the water interests. And long story short, what we were really looking at is protecting a huge landscape. And that has created an anchor in that area of the valley. And it's been a very positive anchor. In fact, I can tell you in no uncertain terms that it's brought in millions more dollars into that part of the valley. There are things happening now that never could have happened without, in fact, things we never could have even imagined happened are now happening now because of that national park. So I highly recommend that you consider making an anchor for Conejos County, because Conejos County deserves that long level protection. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. We'll be around. We're going to close it up now, I think, just in the interest of time, but thank you so much.